Alright, you guys. Got my cool sweatshirt, got my cool gloves, and, I would say I had my shades, but transitional, so, you're just gonna have to take my word when I go outside. I'm gonna hit the road out there. It's gonna be cool. But I also forgot, I don't ride a motorcycle, I actually drive a car. So, the closest thing I guess you could say is ride a bike. That would be cool. Who am I kidding? It's not as cool as what they do in this movie.
Some people would rather crash than slow down.
The Bikeriders is directed by Jeff Nichols with a screenplay by Jeff Nichols himself. Film stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, Tom Hardy, Michael Shannon, Mike Faist, and Norman Reedus. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, after a chance encounter, headstrong Kathy is drawn to Benny, a member of Midwestern motorcycle club The Vandals. As the club transforms into a dangerous underworld of violence, Benny must choose between Kathy and his loyalty to the club. I was actually looking forward to this movie last year because it was supposed to be released in December, and I had seen the trailers. It looked very interesting. It looked kind of cool to see, so I was actually gearing up to watch it during the holiday season, but unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately because of course I was very supportive of it all throughout, which was it got pushed back due to the SAG-AFTRA strike of last year, 2023, and on top of that, it lost its distribution rights with 20th Century Fox, which I don't know why they chose to drop this. I guess to cut losses. I guess Disney saw no worth in releasing this movie. Beats me. But thankfully, Focus Features picked up the distribution rights and secured a June release, which is good because I'm really glad that this film was able to be released because I really dug this movie. I had a fun time watching this film from beginning to end. So now here are some of the positives that I saw with the movie. The performances are terrific. Jodie Comer is lovable as Kathy, a Midwest woman who falls for Benny, who is part of the gang that I mentioned. Comer knows how to bring sincerity and relatability to Kathy as she guides viewers through this movie because in the film she talks with Mike Faist, who is playing a reporter who actually exists in real life, who actually went out and did these things during the 60s and 70s of talking about motorcycle gangs in the Midwest. And as he's talking to her, she's describing what she was feeling with regards to her encounter with Benny, as well as what her views are with the club and some of its members. And you get to experience that through her because some of it is sometimes in the past tense and then sometimes it's in the present tense, depending on where the narrative goes. But for the most part, it's mostly through her discussions with Mike Faist and the discussions that she narrates at certain points that works very well, and I very much enjoyed Comer's performance. Austin Butler is charming and hot-headed as Benny, a member of the motorcycle club, the Vandals. Butler keeps a calm and likable factor to Benny, but knows when to be tough and stubborn in the scenes that he's in with regards to having to rough up a bunch of guys, or if there are a bunch of assholes coming out of nowhere, he has to show that he means business. And so when Butler needs to do that, he knows how to switch between the two. But at the end of the day, both Comer and Butler are excellent together and play well into the romance of the movie. And they are the biggest highlight because this relationship needs to work with regards to having this woman who seemed out of her leagues with this guy, and yet this guy falls for her and she does with him. And you buy their chemistry, you buy their romance throughout this movie, and you really enjoy both of Comer and Butler's on-screen chemistry with each other. Tom Hardy is dedicated and stern as Johnny, the founder and leader of the Vandals. Hardy plays Johnny as a leader who feels like a reasonable and stern leader, but can turn intimidating when he needs to be that. If somebody is to challenge him or somebody has to be above him, he knows when to step in and seem intimidating and very demeaning with where his position is versus other people's positions. So he has to show his toughness as well. And I think Tom Hardy does deliver that very well, especially in an era of like the 60s, of how guys looked and how they seemed tough. It's portrayed very well, and it's due to the performance of Hari. Both Butler and Hari work well with each other, as their relationship feels like a brotherly relationship than being just friends. I guess you could say that it can sometimes be like mentor and mentee, but really it's more of like a brother relationship that you get this sort of camaraderie with each other. And yeah, both Butler and Hardy are excellent with one another. The direction is sharp. Director Jeff Nichols makes a biker film that's relatable by having this old school style of filmmaking that feels raw and personal. And overall, it's a love letter to the 60s. It really shows how much Nichols wanted to keep this feeling of biker culture in this movie, but also having it be somewhat relatable in the scenes that Kathy and Benny, or like just other members of the Vandals and their wives, have with each other, to make it seem like these guys aren't as dangerous as people make them out to be, or just bikers in general. Whenever we usually look at bikers, we usually think it's very scary or intimidating to go up to them, but no, this movie's trying to prove that not every biker gang or not every member of a gang are terrible people. At the very least, like, they're just guys who just fell in with each other and they decided to start something, and they just had nothing else to do in their lives, so they just wanted to ride bikes together, and they show their love and passion through that. And I think that's what Nichols really does well at, is showing the culture of it all. The cinematography is beautiful. Cinematographer Adam Stone shoots a gorgeous and sprawling film that captures the biker culture and the Midwest as a whole. It's easily one of the best looking films of this year. I know this is technically last year, but for this year, since it was released, it is easily a very gorgeous and wide shot sprawling of a Midwest biker film that it makes you just appreciate how much dedication that Adam Stone brought into making sure that this stays as personal as it can be and as rounded as it can be. And for that, I really dug the camera work. The music is groovy. Composer David Wingo creates a score that makes it feel like the 60s all over again, but also the licensed music works well with its period and setting. I mean, if you're gonna have it set in a time period, of course you're gonna have music of that era be in it, and you'll know some of the music when you hear it. And yeah, it also works well into the movie, but the score itself, I think, complements and really shows the appreciation of the Midwest. And again, just biker culture and the type of music that works well within the parameters of the setting, but also for what biker culture usually kind of listens to in a way. The production is stellar. The movie truly brings the 60s to life in folds, like truly on full display. From the vehicle settings, props, to the costumes, it all looks amazing. It's remarkable on how much production people put into with regards to a period piece, and the amount of detailing that they do with regards to, like, whether it be a pocket knife or equipment. Like, Mike Faist has like a recorder and a mic, very much reminiscent of how that equipment was like in the 60s, to the clothing, to the motorcycles themselves, even some of the cars, but really the motorcycles, the sets of it all. I mean, it's all there. The amount of talent and work that goes into making period piece or like period setting films or shows, even, there's a lot of hard work, because you have to make sure it's still believable and that it's still within the parameters of that period. And for that, this movie succeeds in that regard. The story is interesting, following this woman retelling not just how she met her love, meaning Benny, but her experience with this biker game made for a fascinating watch. It had me hooked from the beginning. There was never a point in this movie where there was a section of this film or moments throughout the story that I just was sitting there thinking that this was just either out of place or this just felt terribly sloppy with regards to how it was telling its story. No, it all felt organic and natural within the parameters of how storytelling goes within this film. And for that, I thought it was an interesting watch as a whole. The writing is fantastic. Jeff Nichols crafts a script that keeps the film engaging and flowing with each conversations that characters have in the movie. By having great writing and a phenomenal cast, it excels the material. Easily, this could have come off as being generic or as trying so hard to be old school. No, this film really does try to take liberations with how the culture was and how some of these bikers talk to each other, but also like showing the lives of how these biker gangs work, how it's structured, and how they are seen. They're not terrible people, they're just delinquents. They're just outcasts from society, and their placement, especially in the time of the 60s during the Vietnam era. I mean, yeah, these were just people that were seen as outcasts. Yeah, there was sometimes awful members, but there was nothing but love and passion, and it's because of Jeff Nichols' writing that it does capture and convey the emotion of how that culture is presented. The editing is well put together. Each scene flows well into the next without feeling jarring. Overall, well-rounded film. There was never a point where I think the editing felt like messy or slow. It all felt right. It all felt like it needed to be there at the right moments, and it works for that reason. The bike sequences are amazing. Each bike sequence that happens, whether a chase or just even driving, it's all done well due to the camera work, but really the stunt work, because I would assume a lot of stunt work that went into making sure that these actors didn't get hurt. So, of course, or they probably taught them how to ride some of it, because there's maybe even certain shots that you could tell, like, for example, Austin Butler, when you look at him, you can probably say that he did learn how to ride a motorcycle, but I would want to assume most of the people that are riding in this movie, it's stunt work, and because they're riding vintage motorcycles, that can be dangerous, especially since these are motorcycles that haven't, in today's day and age, we usually have a lot of security measures, or at the very least, like, proper standards of safety when it comes to motorcycle riding versus the 60s, where there was hardly a lot of safety features, and to see a lot of work go into making sure that every turn or even just riding down a highway or a freeway, whatever the case may be, it's cool to see these bikes just cruising, speeding down the road, especially since, like I said, there are stunt people that are putting themselves on these bikes that are, of course, out of date, but they do it for the sake of the authenticity of the movie, and for that, it all looks amazing. It's almost a perfect film for me, but there is one thing that holds this movie back from it being perfect, in my opinion. So now here is my only negative with the film. The pacing and runtime feels drawn out. There's moments where the pacing could dip at certain points. Not necessarily saying that the movie is terribly awfully paced. It's just that there's just points where it can dip in terms of where it does speed things through or cruise through, or where it just kind of slowly kind of crawls out. With a runtime of 1 hour and 56 minutes, I don't think it needed to be 2 hours. I think they could have shaved off a couple of minutes. I think this could have been like either, I think, an hour and 35 or maybe an hour 40, maybe 45, but somewhere around that range. I don't think it needed to be 2 hours, because it just seems like they're just extending the length of it to just make it to 2 hours. Besides that, I really like this film. I'm really glad that this film managed to be released at all in this day and age. It's a scary notion of either a film that was meant to be in theaters just goes straight to streaming, or rather, it just never sees the light of day. And I'm glad this movie did. With a fantastic cast, Nichols' writing and direction made for an interesting watch. I had a fun time. I enjoy this movie. This will easily be one of my favorites of the year, and I had a blast with it. I'm going to give The Bikeriders a 9 out of 10. I think it is an amazing film. It's almost close to being perfect. If it had fixed that pacing and runtime issue, this could easily be my favorite, but it did fell short in that regard. But it's still an amazing film overall. Have a chance, go watch it. Highly recommend. Now I'll be giving my review for Horizon American Saga Chapter 1. That will be it of the June films, and we can move directly into the July films and get through that as fast as possible. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.